In 2018, the UK did something that the nation didn't expect. After decades of reefer madness headlines and strict prohibition, the government essentially admitted they were wrong. They legalized medical cannabis.
Now, for the first time, doctors can legally prescribe some patients with medicinal cannabis in the UK, though restrictions remain tight. It can only be prescribed by a specialist doctor and in a limited number of circumstances where other medicines have failed.
At the time, it felt like a dam had finally broken. But fast forward to today, in early 2026, and the revolution looks more like a bureaucratic car crash. We have 100,000 plus legal patients, yet almost none of them are on the NHS. We have a multi-million pound industry, yet patients are still being harassed and even arrested by police. Today, we're looking at how the UK's cannabis movement got stuck in the mud and why legalization in Britain is currently a luxury only the wealthy can afford. To understand this mess, you have to understand that the government didn't change the law out of compassion. They did it because of a PR nightmare. In 2018, the faces of cannabis in the UK weren't stoners, they were children like Alfie Dingley and Billy Coldwell. Kids with rare treatment-resistant epilepsy suffering hundreds of life-threatening seizures a day. When conventional medicines failed, their parents did what any parent would. They looked for an alternative.
So you went abroad to get this medical cannabis?
Yes, we went to Holland under a neurological paediatrician. So we did everything, officially and properly with a doctor.
And it made, as far as you can tell, a big difference.
An astounding result. We went from having clusters of very severe clusters of seizures every 4 to 10 days, where he would be having up to 5 doses of intravenous steroids, to having 1 seizure a month, where he would still need an IV of methylprednisolone. But what our neurologist in the UK said is we need to find a way of reducing the amount of steroids we're using.
They went abroad, found that cannabis oils worked and brought them back. When the Home Office confiscated a young boy's medicine at Heathrow, the optics were disastrous.
Arriving back at Heathrow today with a 6-month supply, it was immediately confiscated.
Well, he has to have that medicine. He has to get his medicine.
The government looked heartless, so under immense public pressure, they moved cannabis from Schedule 1, meaning no medicinal value, to Schedule 2.
Hannah, I'm also just hearing that what he's going to say to you is that a licence will be issued for Alfie. So your reaction to that, please.
It's amazing news. Thank you very much for letting me know.
The law didn't change overnight, but the government didn't build a bridge for patients to cross. They just moved the keep out sign a few feet back. If you legalise a medicine, but then refuse to fund it or train doctors to prescribe it, have you actually legalised it at all? This is where things get very British. The government changed the law, but they didn't really tell the NHS how to use it. They left it to organisations like NICE, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, to write the rules. And those rules, to put it mildly, are pretty strict. They demand gold standard clinical trials that simply didn't exist for a plant that had been illegal for 90 years and aren't compatible for a plant with so many variants and compounds. Because there was no clear guidance or funding, NHS doctors, rightly worried about their licenses, simply didn't prescribe. The law said yes, but the infrastructure said absolutely not. And in that gap, the private sector saw a massive opportunity. It's 2026 and the UK market is split into 2-tier system. On one hand, you have the NHS. Unless you fit an incredibly narrow criteria, you're on a waiting list, and even then, it barely moves. On the other hand, you have the private clinics. This is where 100,000 plus patients live. It's all legal, CQC regulated, and mostly done via video calls, but it's expensive. Between consultations, follow-ups, and medication itself, you're looking at potentially £200 plus a month. We've effectively commodified a right. You have the money, you're a patient. If you don't, you're still a criminal buying from the street to treat your condition. You'd think legal prescription would end the stigma. Think again. 7 years after legalization, and only just now at the beginning of this year, the National Police Chiefs Council finally had to issue a memo reminding officers to stop arresting people with legal prescriptions. 7 years! The reefer madness hangover is so deep, and the government's refusal to run a public awareness campaign is so total that patients are still carrying the burden of proof for their own legal medicine. So where does this leave us? In 2026, the UK is one of the biggest medical cannabis markets in Europe, but it's also one of the most fragmented. We have high-tech grow operations in the British countryside exporting licensed products abroad, while British patients struggle to pay for imported medications from Canada and Portugal. The grassroots heroes won the battle to change the law, but the unspoken prohibition, the one that's made of red tapes, high costs and institutional stigma, is still very much alive. For many patients, the solution is simple. Let us grow our own, or let a designated caregiver grow it for us. It's cheaper, it's sustainable, and it removes the corporate middlemen. But the government and a large chunk of the industry are dead set against it. The official reason? Safety and consistency. The Home Office argues that homegrown cannabis can't be standardized like a lab-grown product. They say they can't guarantee the THC-CBD ratios or the lack of heavy metals. But if you look under the surface, there's a deeper, more cynical reason. The legal industry has spent millions on high-tech facilities, security, and EU-GMP or Good Manufacturing Practice certification. They are buried under layers of regulatory scrutiny that cost a fortune to maintain. If the government allowed a patient or a caregiver-based collective to grow the same medicine without those £1 million overheads, the corporate business model effectively collapses. Why would a patient pay £6 to £10 a gram plus clinic fees if they can't grow it for the pennies on the literal grassroots level? The industry isn't just worried about safety, they're worried about a competitor that doesn't have to play the same expensive rules. But here is where we need to stop just complaining and start identifying solutions, because safety is a legitimate concern, but it shouldn't be a barrier to access. So how do we establish a fair playing field? Education over prohibition. Instead of banning home growing, provide the tools. We could have certified or approved kits, community testing hubs where GYO patients can check their THC levels for a small fee, and educational programs on safe cultivation, appropriate regulation for caregivers. We don't need £1 million labs for a caregiver to help 5 patients. We need a tiered system setting efficient standards for carers that ensure cleanliness without requiring industrial-grade pharmaceutical certifications. A safety net for the vulnerable. We trust people to brew their own beer and grow their own food by providing a regulated caregiver model similar to what we've seen work in parts of North America. We provide a safety net for those who can't grow for themselves and can't afford the private clinics, effectively removing the need for the illicit market. We have a system where we trust corporations to grow tons of the stuff for import and export, but we don't trust a person with MS to grow 3 plants for their own pain. Progress is being measured in profit margins rather than patient outcomes. While the private sector is thriving, the NHS is still waiting for more data, and the Grow Your Own movement is essentially being treated as a threat to the economy rather than a solution for the sick. But if we actually want to solve the industry gap, we have to move toward a botanical right. That means combining the safety of the lab with the accessibility of the garden. The UK cannabis story started with parents risking everything for their kids. It's ending, for now, with a highly regulated, highly profitable industry that has left many of those same people behind. Until we stop treating cannabis solely as a pharmaceutical commodity and start treating it as a botanical right, that industry gap is only going to get wider. If you're a patient in the UK or thinking about it, I'll put some resources in the description on how to navigate the private system safely. But what do you think? Can the UK ever find a middle ground between big pharma standards and a fair grow your own system? Or is the safety argument just a shield for corporate interests? I want to hear your answers in the comments, so let us know if we should do more of these videos like this, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you do want to see more. Thank you.